Make a video since you asked for feedback about the whole experiences and our side of it now. So I wanted to give you my feedback, and I've been thinking about it because I want to be, frankly, I want to be careful. I don't want to disturb whatever you have going on now. But you have free agency and you've asked, and I'm still going to try to be, careful. And I feel a little bit bad about that because my highest level of respect is that I don't have to be careful because someone can handle. And I actually think you could handle, and if I was just less careful, I think it wouldn't really matter. In other words, I feel it's a little insulting because I think you have a good intellect in general and the base power of making logical connections. So to handle you with kid gloves is a little beneath you, but it's out of compassion, okay, and support for you as a person, and I think I have supported you as a person. I can understand why you might not feel that way about acquaintances such as myself. Let me just recount. When I first saw you, you were making vids in your civilian mode with a few accents and affectations that were well done, and then you started doing, full-on characters. And that just isn't as interesting to me. I believe in artist modes and stuff, but, my skepticism, for example, is a mode where I could communicate with other people. I enjoy that level of communication. So people that could go off and do anything. I do wildlife photography. I do, I do training. I do, and then they could come back to this state where they're not in full bloom at what they do when they're in other productive activities, but they're able to interact with other people that also go off in different directions, so we kind of come to a base. So I like that base. As you did more and more skits, I would see the icons, and I didn't know you were transgender in any sense. Forgive if I'm not going to be careful in the sense of finding the perfect word. But I just thought you were doing skits. And then finally I realized, oh no, he's going through this is part of his personal life. And I still stayed away. And it's like, okay, it doesn't appeal to me, those characters. But if you had got 100,000 viewers and been able to make a few $1,000s a month off of YouTube and nurtured that, that would have been great. I mean, I would have rather it happened to you than to a lot of other people. But then you brought in, or maybe you always had brought in, I hadn't seen, violent imagery. The persona, taking the persona of the Joker, it's a dark image. But there's ways to do it without, like, knives and, going in the street, being threatening. So I saw this as, okay, this guy's channeling this stuff, and now he's channeling some dark things that characterize what I want to cure the world of. So promoting it. So at that point, no, I didn't support that. Oh, hopefully he'll hit it big and we'll get, this will become a great thing. Like, we need another person refining the emotional tension that knives create. Had enough of that. And I became concerned. I said a few things to you, and I asked you if you were still based, and you said you were, but you later blocked me, and it was obvious that you thought unless somebody was telling you do exactly what you're doing, they weren't supportive. To me, that's not support. To me, support is partially being honest enough. Now, it might also involve, after being honest enough to say, wow, I don't really support that, I'm not digging it, or actually I have a complaint about your art. It might also be, but that's okay, live and let live, it's your deal. And including dark art with knives and everything else. I've seen some great films and art that, I don't really enjoy the generation of that stuff. I don't enjoy what the artist goes through to generate it. But, different strokes. If this is what it takes to create a great horror movie, well, there are some, and they capture a certain part of imagination, and it's fair game for art. I think it's hard on the artist, and I think we're in a glut of that. There's so many negative feelings, everybody's processing them as like, okay, well, there's still negative feelings, so people need to process them in new ways. We're also just in danger of getting self-indulgent. and we need to find other things to promote more positive things. So emotionally, from the sidelines, I predicted that this would be a good experience. You would have a good story to tell after this journey if you survived it. And there's signs which I thought you always have had the potential of a strong base to survive it. Because I see some of this as you reach for a kind of star and etherealness. There's a point at which you see the mysticism of the universe, or certain personality types, the poetic type, which I would consider myself as well. You see this and you want to reach for it, and you're thinking about dreams and reality, and there's a sentiment can form that you can form things with your mind. And the mind is so kind of stupid and literal, that takes that to be that, well, if I really pictured a rose in my hand, realistic enough, it'd be there. The truth of that is only if I did that, I would feel like it was there, but nobody else would feel like it. Does that count as being there? It depends on, the definition. Strict, simple definition would be there for me, like anything that is. But I'm a materialist. No, by when I say be there, I mean not just for me, but in some material sense. Okay, and regardless of which definition you choose, by this material kind of definition won't be there, and that could be fine. But of course, then you find out, you go out and you're trying to sell these imaginary roses or something. That's not going to work if you've decided to be that personal about existence, right? So what it turns out is that there is this spiritual touch. Everything is energy, but that doesn't mean that we can just manifest things magically. It means that some little plastic doodad like this is made of energy, that's translucence and trippiness or whatever is a physical reality. It's like the fact that that thought can manifest reality. Yeah. So you could think of flying and you will fly. 12 years later, after a lot of hard work and experimentation. You know what I mean? It's like mind, it turns out that the beautiful mystical reality of minds affecting nature is just a description of what's been going on. You can build a path to your garden. You can wall up a hot spring and make a hot tub. You can manifest things with your mind. Okay, now in the specific, to finish up in sort of the area where, if this hasn't seemed particularly careful, this is the part that's careful. It's like, how much would I go into these particulars? One, I'm not that into watching the characters, but I support artists. I like if there's, a base of this what you call the civilian mode that I can interact with, but if there isn't, it's I never did do more of the kind of videos I like. The closest I got was at one point of, are you in touch with reality enough? Do you have a civilian mode? I'm curious from having known you in the past. And so yeah, I would suggest not doing violent characters. I think there's other things, and I would suggest that there's two things to me that I worry about what their effect will be for you. The secondary of the two, I'll start with the second most important of the two, is that you have a celebrity-istic perspective on certain things you talk about. They're not special people. It's not their job to go discover new celebrities. They don't have much power to do that, as you might think. And certainly not if you want to express yourself as an artist as opposed to play the game the way they've learned to play it. And I think that's dangerous. I think that's especially dangerous in sort of egalitarian holonistic psychonaut journeying the seas of conception, to allow the giant statuesque meaninglessness of celebrities even really great ones. Jack Nicholson, is that it's not their place. If a celebrity comes into this world of conceptions, they come as an individual mortal, and if you can't picture them that way, then you might want to try. That's very important. And then the other thing is spiral dynamics. Okay, spiral dynamics is an interesting thing, like the way of the Jedi. It would just be an awesome, awesome system if it was just part of some science fiction, fictional universe. And it's cool enough you could assign it as the religion of some advanced alien intellect. But, you know, in a novel you could show how it wasn't perfect, and how there were elitist aspects to it. And basically it is elitist aspects. You find yourself on there, and then when you're doing a certain behavior that looks like the words in one of the high levels, then, you know, somebody else is criticizing that, but oh hey, and you can just go, well, they're of another level. They're isolated from you. You're isolating yourself by saying, oh well, they're isolated. They don't really get it. So there's a lot of little insights about personality traits, and it's always fun to make personality categorizations. You know, I made a few myself, but they're sort of arbitrary. There isn't one good one. There's none that are as accurate as the way, like, you speak of spiral dynamics. I think there's some great truth in civilian mode versus, you know, Joker mode versus explorer mode versus wanderer mode versus sad clown mode. I believe in modes, and I believe the brain can have contradictory ideas, and one way to find out what's going on with them is let one of those minority modes have more control and artificially make it the majority for a while, see what it's like, you know, assuming you have the control to go back and forth and you're not going to get trapped, right, in some runaway process, some runaway thought process. But the whole green and orange and it's this and it's purple, let's go there, and that's, it's oppressive. And, you know, the use of colors makes it a little more aesthetically comfortable, but it's just like, oh my God, so now you're going to categorize me from like the leotard set, you know. And when I look at all those personality traits, I'm familiar with all of them. And there's a little bit of familiarity. And people that know it, if they want to be complimentary, they always rate you a couple notches down from the top. And in reality, I'm looking at them going, well, they're like 7 notches away from where I am. And really, it breaks down. There's not linearity like that in nature. There's not stacking hierarchies in those kinds of abstractions. So I consider spiral dynamics not a good influence. But I think you're doing great. It probably doesn't feel like that. There's probably some things you could hold on to and realize it does feel great in comparison, but maybe that only makes other experiences that you should rightfully be able to enjoy and recollect properly. Maybe it makes them lesser. So you're in maybe a hard place. I don't know, but it does look like, okay, well, you know, you've landed, you're in the airport, you need to get out of there, and you want your own place and stuff. But I think you, if you hook up a personal, you know, long term, it doesn't have to actually last, things always change, but, you know, something that's stable for you, that you can do a lot from that. And I think being discovered into the multi-millionaire superstar category of celebrity or actor from YouTube, from doing your own thing, no, not from doing it. Now you have to rehearse and do their thing, dance their dance. However, you're young enough, if you can imagine living off of a few $1,000s a month, it isn't an unrealistic goal to try to get 100,000 subs and partnership and do the interstitial ads and everything, because you'd be making skits and you know, doing characters. There's Ask a Ninja. I mean, the whole vlogging style is conducive to making a character. You know, look at SNL. It's an ever-ending line of characters, often for years and years. As far as I'm concerned, they don't have a good one. But people have a lot of, they want to consume these different kind of characters, and you can get into a character pretty well. But the celebrity cognitive framework that you use for thinking about celebrity and the good celebrities, bad, whatever, that's getting in the way of that, I think. But overall, my main message, one, okay, there was a little bit of kid gloves to this, but not really. I broached all the issues I wanted to. So if you're super sensitive, this won't seem like kid gloves, in which case, good, because then this is my vote of confidence in you. I think you're totally, capable and more intelligent than the average bear. Of course, being intelligent means you can convince yourself of some crazy stuff that you just won't believe until you learn for yourself. So, hey, nothing wrong with that. And yeah, I went through some crazy ideas around your age, so I think it could be entirely productive for your life, and that the smartest thing to do now is get a base of material survival, and don't think of it as a sellout. Because when you eat a piece of bread or even a burger from a fast food joint, that's energy. It's made of energy. Your brain just manifested more energy than it needs for the moment, that's going to carry it into the future. Okay, seems mundane, but all of those beautiful things, chasing all those starry things, they all turn out to be mundane. And you can either be depressed about that, or you can realize, holy shit, it's this world I was trying to escape was the amazing thing all along. And it's a wonderful realization to make.